Hello, everyone. We're glad you're here. Welcome to our podcast, Foundations, Expert Concrete Training and Adventures, hosted by concretepreneur and industry-recognized expert David Stevenson, and joined by new guests every episode. David has been in the concrete industry for over 20 years as a contractor, operator, owner, product developer, and consultant, and has started, grown, and sold contracting companies as well as chemical manufacturing and equipment companies, and is currently the principal consultant with PCC Consulting. With clients ranging from the NFL to Amazon to the Department of Defense, the largest and most recognized brands have consulted with David for their programs and project issues. Foundations is a free podcast for general as well as specialized contractors, owners, designers and architects, developers, and other concrete enthusiasts who may enjoy and benefit from being a part of conversations David has with industry leaders and some of the incredible people he's worked with over his career. We discuss where the industry has been, where it's going, and adventures to be had along the way. Now, here's your host, David Stevenson, interrupted with the occasional question by me, Rachel Fisher.
Welcome to Foundations Podcast, live or not so live from the World of Concrete. We're sitting in the World of Concrete 360 booth. The show has graciously allowed us to record from here today, so thanks for joining us. Today I've got a guest, one of my really good friends that how long have we known each other?
110 years,
110
maybe?
years. It's Jim Walton.
Better than 20 years for sure.
Jim Walton is Technical Services Director. Is that the title, right?
Yeah, Technical Director.
Technical Director for Curecrete and Retroplate.
Yep.
And Jim and I have known each other for literally since the beginning of the polished concrete industry. You know, we wanted to get Jim on our podcast just because our normal conversations on a a few times a month basis, or typically run half an hour to an hour and cover a crazy amount of stuff in that time frame, right?
That's very true. And it's always the hard stuff. It's not the easy stuff, the problems that we're having.
Yeah, so we do discuss job-related fun quite often, right?
And I got to be very honest, though, as many years as I've been in this business, because I pioneered this industry, I still learn some new, too.
I appreciate that.
And I mean that sincerely.
Too, yeah.
I mean that sincerely. I mean, you're the one who told me how to get dye off a floor, for crying out loud. And I didn't know. Then I passed on to 100 other applicators.
When your name's on the patent, it makes it a little easier for that product line, whatever.
But I do appreciate that.
So pre-recording here, Jim and I started a couple of conversations that we just can't help ourselves from talking. So we paused those. And so the two things that we were talking about is, one, what this podcast was for, and then two, talking about the size and breadth of the polished concrete industry. So do you mind if we jump back into those two? The question was, what exactly are we doing and why are we doing it? So as you do, as a consultant, and I'm going to look at jobs and solve problems, I find myself basically teaching the exact same things over and over and over again. But the problem is, but the problem is that to each person that we teach it to, it's new and fresh, and they need that information.
Sure.
Well, that is, I think, a limiter, because we need to be able to get that information out to more people than one at a time.
Right.
So I started, I had the idea, actually, Jeff Bonkowitz from, at the time was with L&M, and tried to talk me into doing something like this for a few years. And so the idea is I started a company called Expert Concrete Training. And in that, it's an online learning format. So right now I've got, let's call it 100 hours of video. And I talk about design, from the architectural side, how to design floors, how to design colors and aggregate grinds and sheet, how to get the gloss designs right and all that. Talk about specifications. And I have a vertical with multiple videos recorded of that. And then to talk about concrete place and finish, and how to place and finish concrete for decorative finishes at the end of the project. So we talk about, mixed designs and chemical admixtures and what you can do, what you can't do, what's better, what's worse. all that. So I've got a bunch of videos discussing that. And then polishing, and then maintenance, and then there's a general business component. And so I record, anywhere from 20 to 45-minute long videos on specific topics.
Okay.
And so the idea is that you can jump into that, and you could, be a guy on a project at 2 a.m. and you pull up the tile and you find a column block out, or a walker duct that's all jacked up, and you don't really know how to handle it. Well, I wanted to be able to get something where that guy at 2 a.m. on a project can pop open his phone, watch 10 minutes of a video that's kind of dialed into his problem, and have all of my knowledge, and by default all of like your accumulated knowledge and other guys that that I talk to regularly, that we can put into that video to solve that issue. So
interesting, very interesting.
So
concept.
That's expert concrete training. Also tied up like all
very needed now as this industry has grown.
Yeah, and every manufacturer, and don't take this the wrong way, every manufacturer teaches their own stuff.
Yeah.
It's quite uncommon to have a chemical manufacturer teaching about diamond tooling and understanding, what a low-grade manufacturer and a high-grade manufacturer, when they're both selling 100-grit resin, what's the difference?
Right.
Well, as a chemical manufacturer, you don't teach that stuff. It's outside of your thing.
Have you seen our new stuff that's come out? Our university?
I've seen some stuff, and I talked to Vernon the other night at dinner, and he was telling me more about it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it really is.
Great.
I mean, it's just piggyback on what you're doing right there, but it's more product specific to our
your
product.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's not generalized as yours are, because sometimes you will be talking to some of my applicators, or our applicators, and anybody else's applicators, but it's all universal.
That's right.
It's the same problems.
Everybody's got the same issues and the same learning curve.
That's exactly right. To me, concrete is all the same, but it's all different.
Every slab everywhere.
Everywhere. That's exactly right. So
it's like a book. Every book that you open is completely written differently.
But it's got pages
now
on
at the end of the day, when they sit on a bookshelf, they may all look the same. All concrete slabs look the same over a period of time. When you don't really know what you're looking at, they're flat and gray. Well, are they flat? No. Are they gray? Maybe. They may be brown. They may be tan. They may be gray. They may be charcoal. But, whatever. And so that's the idea. And then this podcast kind of came as an evolution out of that. I started listening to podcasts. Honestly, you'll get a kick out of this. So a couple years ago, I heard a term being used a bunch called quantitative easing in the economy, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to try to understand what that meant, because I know that somehow it was related to taxes and whatever, but I had no clue what it meant, just as a layperson.
Right.
So I started listening to podcasts really for the first time.
Really?
And listening to economic podcasts that would teach me about, and eventually I got into something called macroeconomics. And learning all about economics of the world.
Took that in college.
Yeah. So I started listening to a lot of podcasts. So when I started to, do this expert concrete training, podcasts are a great way to get in front of a lot of people and to share information that's not behind the paywall. So I want to share problems, history, whatever.
Right.
So that's what this is. So
okay, cool.
What are your general thoughts about that?
I think it's great. I think it's well needed.
Yeah.
It's about time. Somebody did it.
Well.
And if I didn't do it, I'm glad you did.
I've got a wide range of experience just because of the different portions of our industry that we're gotten the blessing to touch. So the next thing that we were talking about was the polished concrete industry. This kind of came organically out of our discussion about you and I's history and kind of where we met and how our careers have developed over the last couple of decades.
Right.
So it led into a conversation about the industry still being relatively in its infancy.
It is.
And you said if you look at a pie chart for all flooring, polished concrete is a tiny little sliver. My response was, well, that's not really totally fair, because the biggest portion of that pie chart is actually carpet, which is not a hard surface floor, so you can't really compare that to us. That's my opinion.
And I'll buy into that.
So the last, I've been getting data from everybody in our industry for a long time, and the last data square footage things that I'm putting together and then comparing of how many square feet of polished concrete are done per year, and then comparing that to the hard surface flooring market in general, we surpassed 40% of the hard surface flooring market in 2020. So,
who would have thought 20-some years ago?
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. And even 10 years ago.
Really?
12 years ago, something. really the retailers and the educational space, I think, are probably the two biggest drivers. Everybody figured out that VCT was cheap but expensive to take care of. Polished concrete is a little more expensive but a lot cheaper to take care of. Yeah. So, in general, what are your, as you work first for Vic International and then into Retroplate, you watch a lot of contractors come up. What do you see as the evolution of contractors from the time that you got started until today?
Well, back in the day when we first started, this industry didn't start out as a polished industry.
Nope.
It started out as a surface prep. And we
coatings removal.
Coatings removal. When I first came to the world of concrete in '94, like I was telling you earlier, I was the only grinder here, surrounded by shot blasts. You're hard pressed to find a shot blast machine outside now.
Yeah. I agree.
And now the evolution now is from grinders to ride-on power trowels.
Right.
And I think that's the next big thing. And it has.
I think they've got a very there's a use case for them.
Right.
It's got to be specific projects at specific times in their life cycle.
It's got to have the right square footage to make it worth your while, because they can't take a coating off.
Right, and you got to be able to run wet, and you got to have lots of open footage, and you can't have walls, But I agree with you. There's absolutely a place.
There's a place for that. For sure. I mean, some of the larger accounts that we do that are 60, 70, 80,000 square feet.
Right.
That we have to time constraints of 2 weeks. There's no other alternative unless I bring 25 tilt-back machines in.
I've done that.
I know you have. But anyway, that's what I see. Like I said, this industry started out as a surface prep industry. We were removing coatings off the floor, trying to replicate a shot blast pattern, because the old HTC machine,
I remember,
we were using those little 3mm scare finder.
I remember.
You remember those?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they make them anymore. They were carbide, and they kind of replicated like a 180 shot blast pattern.
Yeah, same texture.
But the guy from in Texas came up. He was the tenant rep, and he said, if you can find the right diamonds for that machine, because tenant had this high traffic thing, is high pH. I mean, it was very tough floor. I think it was like 12,000 psi, something like that.
I don't remember.
Not pH, psi.
Yeah.
So anyway, over a course of time, we came up with the CA1, the 16 grit diamond, and
I remember.
Yeah.
So I did a big tooling manufacturer. I did their floors. They were They were trying to turn a part of their warehouse manufacturing floor into offices.
Right.
But it had like 40 years of grease and everything else on it, right?
Yeah.
And man, I literally tried everything that I could think of.
Right.
And then picked up those 16 grits, put it on a grinder with a lot of weight. I had a guy sitting on one, and another one had a 5-gallon bucket full of water on it to get the head pressure up to get it. But it got through all of that mess.
Yeah. Well, I was instrumental in developing it at Diamond, because when, like I said, this industry started out as a surface prep industry, but I came from marble, granite, and terrazzo background. So all we had, because we brought the HTC equipment in originally for the marble and granite industry, okay? And it just didn't take off, because, I mean, who wants to buy a $19,900 machine
when I can buy an $800 swing buffer?
Exactly.
And get a similar look.
Exactly. And or the terrazzo guys are happy with the 5500 turco machine. Right? So.
Because they're just grinding and then putting a sealer on.
Exactly.
So
that's
they didn't
exactly
care.
Right. They don't care. So we go out there, and I go out and start taking these. I took all these leads that I got from the trade show, and most of them were tenant applicators and stuff. And my diamonds would not cut into this product at all. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I was constantly on the phone with my home office and Sweden, because I knew what I needed.
Yeah.
Okay, but it didn't happen overnight.
No.
It did not happen overnight.
Just for the sake of our listeners, if you're dealing with Europeans from a contracting standpoint,
you got a different mindset.
And I understand completely, Europe's been around a lot longer than the States, but I think maybe because of that, their expectation of a change tends to take about 7 or 8 times longer than what we in the U.S. are, how we can move, how fast we can move on changes. It doesn't matter what level or what company type. It's I've literally, every time, it's all the same.
And if you get caught into their 5 weeks of holidays.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So you're just kind of at their mercy. So it didn't happen overnight, but let's say it did happen.
Yep.
So finally we came up with a CA1, the 16 grit diamond, and it walked through their product, their high traffic product, like butter.
Yeah.
So this rep from the tenant agency told me, or the tenant company told me, that if I could develop the right diamond for that machine, that every tenant applicator in this country would buy at least one, and most of them would buy several.
Yeah.
And you know what? He was right on the money.
Right.
Because they had a machine called the Eco Prep machine.
I remember that.
That was a propane unit that used
with the water
flint.
tank on it.
Yeah, well, it used flint. No, this one used flint. Okay, and it went down through a chute and it had a carburetor belt on it. You remember that?
But I'm saying, when I remember, it had like this tank thing on the front for added head pressure weight.
Right, exactly.
That was cantilevered
right.
over the front of it.
It cantilevered.
I remember that.
It was propane. So what's the problem back then? Now we're talking 20-something years ago.
You didn't have enough power.
You didn't have enough power. Plus, you didn't have,
down.
and you didn't. OSHA wasn't involved so much. So how many people fell off of that machine and hurt themselves pretty bad?
Probably a bunch. Yeah, I'm sure.
Plus, they didn't sell that machine. Tenant rented that machine for like $5,000 a month. So I mean, when I walked
so you'd
in,
rent it by the project.
That's exactly right. And you couldn't get next to the wall. You couldn't, because the machine was as big as a car. Yeah, it was huge.
It's huge.
And it had a carburetor belt, and they put flint down it. And you're right, they had the water tank there for head pressure. Yep. Because they didn't know how to dial that stuff in yet.
Right.
Okay.
No,
so I mean, that's now you're talking the infancy of this industry. Okay. And then since I came from the marble and granite industry, I mean, I polished my first concrete floor in Vic International's warehouse. Yeah. But I didn't use any densifier, and polished up beautifully because I did it all wet because that's what I knew. It looked great, but guess what? How long do you think it lasted?
2 years.
Yeah, 2 months. Yeah, I mean months because it was right there with all the foot traffic and the fork truck traffic.
Yep.
And there was nothing there to hold a scratch pattern.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you're a big believer in densifiers, as I am.
You're
okay?
right.
I don't.
Well, I did too many floors early in the day with none.
Exactly.
To know what, how it affects the overall finish.
There's got to have something there to hold a scratch pattern.
Yeah.
If you don't have a densifier, and I don't care what densifier it is, if it's put down correctly, it's going to hold a scratch pattern.
Wait. You're like glossing over the if it's put down correctly.
Well, that's it. If you get enough densifier in the floor, it's going to hold a scratch pattern.
I showed up at a stadium job that I was consulting one time. It has 3.5 million square feet of concrete.
Yeah.
Polishing. Yeah. I show up at about 11 o'clock at night. I was in town, had nothing else to do, couldn't sleep. Said, the guys are working. I'm going to go up there and check.
Yeah.
I walk in. They have drums of retroplate, and they're pouring it down the drain.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't doubt it. I'd like to know their names.
Because you did. At the time, I called. I let everybody know. But so they were required to have so many square feet of retroplate, and they were doing essentially like a spiff coat, like a super light spray, just spread it around a tiny bit and keep right on going. That's what they were doing. So they had 75% of their product left, so they couldn't take it home because then everybody would know that they didn't do the job per spec. So they were just dumping it down the drain.
That's a shame.
Well,
it hurts my heart to hear that.
I know, but I mean that's in the old days when people didn't understand it at all anyway. Right. Now you're making me do something that I can't see a difference with, and it doesn't make a difference today on the work that I'm doing today.
That's right.
And it took a long time to permeate that through the industry that today was not what densifiers were for. It's for the forever.
That's exactly right.
That's
exactly right.
So you go back, you deal with, and for, I don't know, whatever the last 17, 18 years, I think, you deal with certifying. Since you moved over to them. 17 years?
18 years.
All right. I finally got one date right.
There you go.
We were talking about how that, once you go past about 15 years, everything starts to blur.
Yep, sir. What was your name again?
I'm Jim Walton. Nice to meet you.
Nice.
People call me Turk.
That's right. Born on Thanksgiving, right?
There you go.
That's how I heard that.
Yeah. Tell me about your podcast. So your role at Curecrete has been deciding whether contractors were legitimate or not, and there probably is better words to use to describe that, but that's the lowest hanging, easiest one.
Yeah.
And then certifying and training that specific contractor
True.
to be able to install products. So my question to you is, in that specific role, you've seen massive evolution of the guys doing the work. I mean, I remember back when I first got started with 10 guys, I was one of the biggest guys in the country.
You were. And you wanted every one of your applicators to be certified because I think you wrote your specs.
That's right. So
all your guys on the job to be certified.
Back in the day, there wasn't really anybody writing specs, and so I was teaching architects
how to write specs
and writing my own specs. Right?
That's
yeah.
right.
And I said, one of the things is you had to be trained because I'd had guys already, even way back then, that had no idea what they're doing.
Right.
Randomly buying like a 12-inch, grinder from Edco or something, which nothing wrong with that grinder, but then taking that and showing up on an 80,000 square foot high school to polish it.
Right, exactly.
And they have no idea what they're doing. So,
and Dave, not to interrupt you, but that's still true today. That when we do our training classes out of my home office or whatever,
right?
Companies might send their president out or their owner, and he's not actually boots on the ground guy.
Yeah, never actually would do any of the work.
He's not boots on the ground. Yeah. So he comes back, we certify their company, and now we got the same scenario that you're just painting.
Yeah, he's hiring anybody that...
but I'm certified.
Yeah.
My company's certified, but I'm doing not very good quality work.
Right.
And now then I have to get in there, and sometimes then I have to either retrain them.
And it's a detriment to you because the owner says, "Oh, this is a retroplate contractor."
That's exactly right.
They don't say, "Oh, that guy's a retroplate contractor." Right. These guys that are on my job have never been trained by anybody. Right. They don't ever know that.
Right. That's right. And it's a bad representation not only for my company, for this whole industry.
Which is honestly one of the reasons that I got into consulting to begin with, because as a manufacturer, I couldn't affect the whole industry.
Right.
As a contractor, I couldn't affect the whole industry.
Right.
As a consultant, I'm an unbiased third party, so the owners listen to me. Most of the time I carry their checkbooks, and I look at submittals, and I literally have called you how many hundreds of times. What do you know about this company?
Right.
They say they're certified, but the guy that I met didn't know how to install densifier.
Isn't that crazy?
Are they actually certified, or was it an individual? And the 50-50, it's... Yeah, they were certified 8 years ago, but I'm looking at the system, and they haven't bought 1 gallon of product in 8 years. Yep. So they're claiming an old certification because they came to one class one time.
They cherry-picked them.
No idea what they're actually putting in.
That's exactly right. And they don't know what they're doing.
But in my role as a consultant, I say, this contractor is not qualified to meet the specification requirements, so...
And I back you 100% every time.
Yeah, so we're not going to let them do this.
Now, one thing I want to go on record with, even though I work for a large company, that has been around for many, many years, and since '99, we started the densification process. But any floor that's done correctly out there, I don't care whose densifier is down, and they do a good job. It's great for this industry.
That's right.
So I don't
for every one good job, we get 3 more. For every one bad job, we lose 10.
I tell all my applicators that come through me that, your competition is not the guy that's doing other densifiers. It's the hardwood people. It's the hard surface floors. That's who your competition is.
Tile,
because as
vinyl.
long as X number of companies does great floors, that's just great for our industry, period.
Yep.
It's just a testament. The problem that I have in this industry and the evolution that I'm seeing, that the price is going down and down.
Commoditization.
Absolutely, and you've got people that show up with a swing machine in the back of a pickup truck
and call it polished.
Put a ton of guard on the floor, burnish it, and there's a big difference, as you well know, as well as I do, or better than I do. There's a difference between shiny floor and polished floor. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they leave a shiny...
So for the audience, because people that listen to this podcast, not a lot of them, some of them are going to be contractors, some of them are going to be manufacturers, but plenty of them are going to be owners, end users, architects, whatever. So to give some background to that, when you mechanically polish the floor, it's similar to like a river polishing a rock.
Right.
some of us did, some of us didn't. But like I picked up a rock when I was a kid that I thought was a really cool looking rock, pulled it out of the river, and it's shiny. 20 years later, that rock's still sitting on my shelf, and amazingly, it's still shiny because it was mechanically polished by the river. So on floors, when you mechanically polish the floor, you severely limit the damage that can be done and extend the life cycle. So the damage that can happen is acids and cleaners that attack, or buildup of scratches, tiny scratches that just get built up. Well, both of those issues are very easy to correct with a good mechanical polish.
Right, exactly.
But a few years ago, and actually you may or may not know this, but I think that I was inadvertently one of the causes of this product being invented.
Oh, I know you were.
The industry introduced topical build stain protects.
Yep.
And so these are thicker, almost like mini wax / sealers.
Yep.
And the reason why I say I think I was partially to blame for that is because when we were doing dye, and you dye a floor, the chips or the little cracks, they look lighter in color or white, even if you sprayed the floor black or blue or purple or green or whatever. And that's because you have nothing in the polish takes care of the surface, but anything that's subsurface, even if it's a chip, the polish can't get to it, so it doesn't show the dye. So a topical guard, when I was first using them, the idea was to put the guard on, let the flat part, the topical part on the main floor disappear in 30 days, and all the stuff that soaked into the cracks and the pits and the pores shows the color, so visually the color is the same, and you then go back to living on the mechanical polish.
Right.
Well, people took that and literally like doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down.
And it makes it tough for the reps out there that are trying to sell this, or the consultants that are trying to sell it.
Yep.
How many times have you heard, oh, well, I've seen polished concrete and I don't like it.
Right.
Or
Or the general contractor says, yeah, we've tried polished concrete, never had any good luck.
yeah.
I hear that
the wrong
all the time.
applicator.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
You get a good qualified applicator that knows what he's doing, has got the right equipment, and knows the steps, because as you well know, there's a honing step, but there's a grinding step, a honing step, and a polishing step. Mm-hmm. So if we're mechanically grinding that floor, we've got to go through these grinding, honing, and polishing, period. Okay?
So my perspective, and I want to see if you have the same thing, my perspective is that over the years ago, the difference between the guy that did mechanical and the guy that did mechanical and some chemical,
right,
there wasn't a lot of difference.
Right.
They might be the same guy on different projects at different price points.
Right, yeah.
But as the industry has grown and progressed, what I kind of see is I'm going to use a socioeconomic comparison. So you got your high class and you got low class, and the middle of the road is disappearing.
Right.
So you have
right.
big guys that are just getting bigger,
Right.
and they will typically, to a fault, even if they're losing money, those guys, they'll do it the right way. And then you have what I'm again referring back to, not directly, not saying they're low class, but the lower economic status. Well, those guys are all about, I need to get the work, so I'm going to bid the job not on what it's going to cost me, but what I think you're going to bid.
That's right.
And a lot of the problem is because those guys tend to be operations guys that came out of other companies, and they look at the business and they say, oh, the owner's making all the profit, not understanding what it costs to actually run the business. Right. So then when they go start their own, they're starting it from the position of operations, not business management.
Right.
They know how to do work, but they end up getting trapped in the pricing cycle.
Right.
Without knowing what it takes to actually be successful.
That's
right. Yeah. And so those guys, they tend to a lot more frequently do the fake it. Either some version of a melted resin polish, or using a guard to get a shine polish.
A bunch of diamond impregnated pads.
Right.
So a good polished concrete, densified polished floor, and you start putting guard on it, or you don't put guard and you just use like a diamond impregnated pad. Well, you're turning a very low maintenance floor into a high maintenance floor.
Right. Yep.
And now we're back to where
I've got one retailer that literally told me, so we don't understand the polished concrete. We hear that our competitors are doing it. This is a grocery chain.
Right.
They say, we don't understand this polished concrete because everybody says that it's supposed to be lower maintenance. Well, we were spending $2.20 a foot to maintain our VCT floors. Right. We're spending $2.60 a foot to maintain our polished concrete floors.
Really? Wow.
Because the way that they had to do it in order to maintain it was literally have to reapply guard every 60 to 90 days. Well, if you're reapplying guard every 60 to 90 days over large sections of your floor, something that you're supposed to do like every other year,
right?
And you're doing it 6 times a year,
well,
the cost adds up and shoots up really fast. So it was a struggle trying to get them back on the right path.
Right. And my recommendation to them, and you might have said something different, but that whole store probably didn't need to be re-guarded. You know?
No, but it's hard to transition from no guard to a little bit of guard to a medium amount of guard.
The pickle juice aisle and that aisle,
those
for
aisles,
sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, oil, vinegar, pickle juice.
You know me long enough to know that I'm not a big guard fan in the first place. Okay, because the only time I actually recommend guard is if there's added color to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which you and I have talked about many times, even being from your past history, and if there's acidic stains present.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think the floor needs to be guarded. You know?
I think it depends on the environment. Grocery stores, I feel like, need to be guarded no matter what.
That's acidic. That's what I'm talking about.
Not just that aisle. It's milk spills, wine spills,
That's right. Anything that's acidic, if it's present, that needs to be guarded.
So actually, that reminded me. When we started a few minutes ago, you said, that I taught you how to get dye out of floors.
Yeah, you did.
All right, so I'm gonna tell you a story that is an intersection here. So I was managing consulting for a big grocery chain.
Okay.
And they had a very high profile store that they built and spent an insane amount of money on. It was actually in the DC area.
Okay.
I won't give the brand or anything. But so they were doing grand opening was like 10 a.m. on a Saturday. And we finished the floors like the Tuesday before. We, punch list done, everything's done and finished. Well, evidently, as they were stocking the store at about 8:30 p.m. on Friday night, they figured out that the entire wine, which they had a huge wine section right inside the front door to the right, the guy that was installing the wine racks flipped them upside down, and at about 9:30, 10 o'clock, all the wine started to fall off the shelves, and they ended up breaking over 200 bottles of wine.
Gosh, what a
and
nightmare.
It flowed through the front main entrance to the store that they're grand opening in 12 hours. So I get this like 9 calls in a row at like 1 a.m. from the director of construction for this big grocery store chain, freaking out about this grand opening and what's going on. So they had spilled all the wine. Well, for those of you listening, the best dye in our industry is solvent-based dye. It's acetone carried, works deep into the slab. The solvent dissolves the dye powder, carries it in, solvent evaporates, leaves the dye behind. Wine is essentially red dye with alcohol as the solvent carrier.
Yeah.
So I've actually colored floors with wine before.
Really?
I have. It's awesome. Very deep, rich color. So I get this call telling me, hey, we got all these bottles of wine. It's flowing out the front of the store. We got grand opening. Everybody's going to be here. I got dignitaries coming. It's a big, big deal. And so I literally called the owner of the polishing contractor that I knew personally on his cell phone. And again, had to call him like 9 times to get him to wake up. But after like 9 times he answered. I told him what was going on. I said, bud, they know that the issue is, it's their issue. Whatever the cost is, they're going to cover whatever the cost is.
Yeah.
And so based on me and my word telling him that, dude mobilized 5 crews of guys.
Yeah.
I called the director of construction back. I said, go to every grocery store within 50 miles and bring me all the bleach off the shelf from everyone.
Yeah.
We showed up, literally put about 80 or 90 gallons of bleach down. We had no option.
Yeah.
We didn't have the time to do a 50-50 mix like we normally do.
Yeah.
So we put bleach, literally we're creating dams, and each crew had a like a 50 by 40 area.
Yeah.
And so we took little foam strips, created a dam, flooded it, and just agitated it, worked it. By 8:30, you could not tell that there was one drop of wine spilled on that floor.
Sweet.
So you just used the bleach, and then all you had to do after was run a burnisher over the top of it. So that's an extreme case, but contractor wouldn't have known what to do.
Let me ask you something. Were you concerned about any kind of etching from the
bleach? No, I've never had bleach etch a floor.
I have not either.
Not one time.
Some people get a little antsy about doing that because they think it might.
When you look at the pH, there's no possible way to do that. Concrete's high alkalinity.
You've talked to enough people say, "Well, I don't want to put bleach on my floor."
I say go. It's interesting. You're wearing a white shirt right now.
I know.
I bet you that your wife is washing that shirt with bleach. So it's fine to be on your body, but you don't want it on your concrete. And that usually completely shuts that whole argument
That's
down.
my point.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? As the industry is continuing to grow, and as guys like us are, we're not out, but we're aging out, and there's several
older than you are.
There's several generations of newer guys that have come in behind us.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the owners are handing the baton to their children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
or they're guys that they mentor.
Absolutely. Some of their younger employees, they're handing off they're handing the baton to them, which I think is a great thing, to be honest with you. Because it's an industry that's going to continue keep growing with the right people, the right education. Even though the old guard is gone, the new guard is coming up.
Yep.
Do you see the same thing?
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very encouraging,
So what do you see with that next generation? And understanding that, our generation, there was nobody there to teach us. There's nobody there to listen to tell you when you spill wine on the floor, this is how you handle it, right? We didn't have that. I had to figure it out on my own.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so now you've got second generation or even third generation owners of some of the companies, and they're starting, inherent with that knowledge. They're starting inherent from those points that are way ahead of where we started.
Oh, absolutely. Plus,
where do you think that they're going to be able to take the industry in the next, say, 10 to 20 years?
I think they have, like our company is doing, and like as you're doing, the younger generation is not like me. I'm an old man, okay? They go to Facebook. They go to the internet. To get their resources.
Quick, their instant gratification, which is good in some areas and really bad in some others.
It all depends where they're getting the gratification from.
Exactly.
Your mom always told you don't talk to strangers. So trust the information that you're getting from the source that you're getting it from.
Yeah. So now everybody talks to strangers and trusts strangers to give them all of their.
That's exactly right.
So where do you think that's going to lead us, though, as an industry?
As an industry, I'm a little concerned about that because how do you qualify somebody to know that they're telling you what the right answer is?
Yep. Yeah.
You got an answer for that?
The way that, like when I'm explaining to people and I'm teaching contractors, right? I say, well, pay attention to the source.
Right.
And then think about research. And then think about whatever the knowledge is. It doesn't matter what you're learning.
Right.
Think about what is the benefit of the person telling you that knowledge. If they're telling you that, say, let's say I was a chemical manufacturer. I'm saying, retroplate sucks or whatever. Now I'm downplaying retroplate. How does that benefit me? Well, if you go down, I take market share. So therefore, I'm going to run you down as often as possible.
That's right.
But if I'm the contractor and I go, well, he's just running him down so that he can take over market share. Well, that makes me go, well, that's not a real thing. It's basically like a political move, right? It's not my product is better than your product.
Right.
If somebody's selling you, I'm not going to tell you that they're bad. I think they're great for the industry. I'm glad they've been here.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too.
My product is superior to theirs, and here's the reasons why. Well, I'm much more inclined to listen to that person than I am at the other. So if you have a contractor telling you that this manufacturer is horrible or that product is bad, are they telling you because they're trying to help you as their friend, or are they telling you because they're trying to keep you from doing that and swaying you to go somewhere else, which then gives them the
It's almost like when you look at stuff online, you see negative reviews.
Yep.
And where do you think these negative reviews come from? By and large,
from the
competitors.
From the competitor. That's right. Yeah.
So, if they know that going in, let's take that with a grain of salt. Trust your source. Do some research on where your information is coming from.
And who benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There are some great sources of stuff out there, guys, that, well, I'll even say one of the guys, he's a friend of mine. I've known him I knew his dad from about the same time I met you, and that's Josh Jones from STI.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
And he gets out there.
I broke bread many a time.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
So he gets out there, and I see him pop up on different social media stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I see him teaching about all kinds of products, things how to do things, and I really respect him for that.
Absolutely.
So for those of you who are listening, Josh Jones from STI, Prep Master.
Bill's.
Yeah, so that's a multi-generational family-owned business, right?
Yeah.
And so go find him or look him up or whatever. So you're concerned about, probably like a lot of other sections of our life that are not related to our business, that people getting all their information from social media is not necessarily the best thing. I think I agree with that 100%. I'm always worried about how, the good side of that is we can disseminate a lot of information very fast to a broad group of people.
Right.
The bad side of that is you can disseminate a lot of bad information very fast to a large group of people.
That's right. But the large group of people, if they try to disseminate that information on their own, they're lost.
Right?
They're lost. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to trust, what to listen to.
Right.
Because if you listen to 10 different people, they're going to give you 10 different answers.
Yeah.
And which is the right one?
Right. You and I have had a few differences over the years about how to achieve a certain goal. And I say, I don't understand, his perspective on that. And I'm sure that there's been times when you said, I don't understand David's perspective on that.
But I'm right.
Oh, I'm right. At the bottom line is both
right.
of us
That's
are
right.
trying to help achieve a goal.
That's exactly right.
And 9 times out of 10, the achieving of that goal has no benefit or detriment to us.
No.
It's just attempting to try to help a situation, right?
Absolutely.
And so in that case, you get to do your due diligence, try a few different things. But, I would agree with you that I am concerned about that as well. I'm concerned about the commoditization of the industry. Yeah. It's not painting. It's not drywall.
No, that's right.
It's not fence building. It takes a craftsman to do this work.
But, there's times that I'll even tell my people at my company when I'm doing training, because everybody wants to be on the same page, right? They all want to be singing on the same song sheet.
Yep.
And I tell some of the people that aren't on the boots on the ground kind of people, there are 100 ways to get to point A to point B.
Yep.
And I'm not here to change what they're doing. I just want to get my product into their system, right? So that's just it. I mean, there's 100 ways to get from point A to point B. Are they all wrong? Are they all right?
Yep. So I'll share something with our listeners and with you too, is a way that I've actually sold RetroPlate in the past. I use this a lot in a lot of different sections, but I was at a little country diner one time, maybe 10, 15, hell, it could have been 20 years ago. I don't know. I saw a sign on the wall that really struck me, and I kind of carried it forward as my motto. And it had, it had 3 words. It said, good, fast, cheap.
Yep.
And then below it said, you can only pick 2. And so, you use RetroPlate as an example. So there are other products that, whether they're right or wrong, the manufacturers have recommended massive square footages, light applications, spray it and grind it right behind it. There's no, and with RetroPlate, it has always been spray it, get enough to get full penetration, apply to the point of rejection, work it until it's starting to have the reaction, and then take it off.
Yep.
And so there you get the good component. If you want the fast component, you go with those guys. If you want the good component, come over here. And then, the cheap component, if you want, you can do RetroPlate pretty inexpensively. It's a very good price product. And I know I'm talking more about one manufacturer that I normally do, but, you're sitting here. So it's a great thing. Yeah. Another manufacturer, their price point, if you looked at it on a consistent installation, if they had to apply their product to the point of rejection, then their price would be 5 or 6 times what your price is, because you're building it to do this. They're taking advantage of the square footage stretch that they put out, and the end user, the contractor, a lot of times is just forced to listen to the information of both. Well, then I say common sense. I ask this question all the time. I say, how big is your house? The guy says, it's 1,500 square feet, or it's 2,000 square feet. I say, okay, let's say it's 2,000 square feet. Look at the product. We turn over the bottle, and it says 1,200 to 1,600 square feet per gallon.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, so let me ask you this. Let's take your bedroom out. Could you go to your refrigerator, grab a gallon of milk, pour it out on the floor, and spread it around your house, everything but your bedroom, and get enough coverage where you couldn't see the floor underneath? Well, no, it's only a gallon of milk. So how do you think you're getting enough reactive material into the concrete to create a long-term benefit if you're putting it down so thin that you couldn't even see white milk on your floor if you put it down that thin?
I really like that analogy. I really do, because what I usually tell them is that, there's only, when you spread it that thin, there's only two places that densifier can go. One in the floor and one in the atmosphere. But when you put it down that thin, where do you think it's going? It's getting evaporated into the atmosphere. Well, so very little densifier is going to the floor. Exactly.
That's where I use the milk analogy, because it's easier to visually kind of think through it. Because everybody spilled.
Can I use that in the future?
Please take it. If it helps you and it helps the industry, then take it. Yeah. But everybody spilled milk, so they know what that looks like, absolutely. And they know, they have the jug, so they know that it's white, and you can see white easier. But anyway, so I digress. So with the, industry's growing, we're still growing really fast. There's a push to commoditize by give or take half the industry. The other half of the industry says we're going to do it right. We may cost more money. I've got more work than I can keep up with, because all those the guys that are doing it wrong, I come behind them to clean up.
Yeah, exactly right. And making a darn good living doing it.
Yep. And so those guys, I think, are our future if we can leverage that. I think the social media, I don't know how to police that to stop the weird, crazy stuff from getting in there. But I think it's more incumbent on the end user to try to differentiate between the good and the bad there.
Well, the problem that we have is that it's like I tell what I lovingly call my spray and go guys. Okay, even Retroplate has those guys, but Retroplate only uses a certain number of applicators.
Right.
You have to be certified to use our product. But I can go to any distributor and buy a densifier off the shelf, and I don't even own a grinder anymore. Yeah. And I can still buy that product.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So what does that tell us about our industry in a whole? That anybody and everybody has easy access to that, and they can put this stuff down any way they want. Who's policing it? How it goes down?
Me.
Yeah, exactly. And
a few other guys like me.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, how much?
And when they come to me, I have to change their attitude real quick.
I can only see what I see. You can actually go into the system and see what they bought.
That's exactly right.
And that's a benefit that you have.
Exactly right. Because the numbers, I can give you an example. Just recently, we had a project up in New York, upper state New York. I'm not going to mention any place or any applicators and everything. The architect sent me pictures. My God, David, I wouldn't have that floor in my own garage, right?
We've had this conversation how many times over the years?
Many, many times. So I talked to the applicator without trying to throw him under the bus, and I says, my records, getting back to what you just said, indicate that you haven't bought any of my products since 2018. And you said you put my product down on this floor. How can that be? You have no proof of purchase.
I had a couple of drums in there.
Okay, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
So then I says, okay, fine. Back in 2018, you bought enough product to put down on this one tractor store.
Right.
Now, either that tractor store got shorted.
So, you destroyed the warranty on that one. Or you destroyed the warranty on this one.
That's right. And guess what? You're not going to get a warranty on this one because you have no proof of purchase.
And I'm telling the customer so they can go ahead and pursue whatever action they deem necessary.
And then the applicator got mad at me because he thinks I threw him under the bus. And I said, dude, it is what it is, because we have records.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we have records.
Right.
Because we have to, there's not only a written warranty, there's an applied warranty.
If you buy a new car and you have a 36,000 mile warranty, and you don't one-time change the oil.
That's right.
And you put diesel fuel in the unleaded engine.
That's right.
And then you take it back up there at 35,000 miles because it's broken down.
That's right.
They're not going to warranty it for you, right? Because you're not following their guidelines. You get warranties as rewards for following the right procedures.
Doing the right thing.
For doing the right thing, right?
And at the end of the day, we all have to do the right thing.
So, well, Jim, thanks for joining me.
And
great conversation as well. For those listening, literally, we have this conversation about entirely different than anything we've talked about here, but this kind of level of conversation
all the time. For many years,
periodically, all the time.
You always one of my best friends. You know, you and I've known each other for 20-something years. You were one of my best applicators that I had, and hated to lose you on that one. But your company's still viable. But you know, but it's we don't have the relationship we did way back in the back. But it's always a pleasure talking with you, as we always do. You know.
So I remember. So for you and I had some great conversations about fishing. And so in my mind, I thought, oh, you know, he's a fisherman. He's like me. He's going to be up at 4:30 in the morning. So I would be, you know, headed to work at 5 a.m. I go, oh, we call Jim. He got time. He's not going to be doing anything yet. And I call you. Yeah. And you were gracious enough to take the call a lot. But I think looking back, I think a lot of times you were not really, you know, up and at it yet.
Yeah, well, I still get up pretty early, but sometimes not as early as you.
Yeah, it's so for several years, you know, I'd call you every few weeks, and you'd be the first call in the morning.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's 5 a.m. Central Time or 4:30 Central Time, and you were living on the East Coast, so you're an hour ahead. I'm like, it's 5:30. He's going to be up.
Yeah, but I didn't say I moved back to the Central Time Zone.
So how do people get a hold of you today? You know, you're at Retroplate. You're doing,
like I mentioned earlier, we do only do certified applicators. We don't put applicators on top of one another, so we protect the applicators that we do have.
So if I'm an owner, end user, architect, how do I get?
You get in touch with our company.
How do we get in touch with you?
You want my phone number?
No, not your phone number. Not unless because they're going to call you at 5:30 in the morning.
I don't want them to call me.
You have like the number for? You know, look up retroplate.com.
Yeah, I can give it to you. I don't even know their number, but I'll give you
the main.
Yeah, but normally we find out if you're in a territory. I always go through my reps.
Yep.
And we have to have a need.
Do you have a site? You know, a page on the website that shows the territorial reps for which area?
CureCrete.com.
Okay, CureCrete.com.
RetroplateSystem.com.
Okay.
All right, or AshfordSystem.com. But I would either go to CureCrete.com or Retroplate System, that's singular.com. Okay? So, but I can give you their phone number. I don't know it off the top because I got this. The only technology that I know is speed dial on my phone, right? So,
sure. Gone are the days where we remembered everybody's phone number.
Right. It's 888-942-3144.
Okay.
And they will direct you to me.
Yeah.
I promise.
So if they want to email you,
Jim at RetroplateSystem.com. And it's singular, Jim at RetroplateSystem.com.
Right.
Now, we always, like David alluded to earlier, we're a top tier, I feel we're a top tier company. We've always had top tier applicators. So you have to have equipment. Typically, we love to have experience. We like to have you trained by the equipment manufacturer.
Yep.
Okay? I'm not really concerned about what equipment you own as long as you have equipment, okay, and know how to use it. All right, but there again.
So if a guy shows up with a 12-inch, cup wheel grinder to polish an 80,000 square foot school, you're fine.
I'm fine if he wants to go to work for somebody who wants to do edges, because if he knows how to do that, he can do edges.
that's about what that's good for.
About good for.
Yeah.
No, they have to have the right equipment. I don't care who's manufactured, but they have to have the right equipment. And I can talk another hour on the horror stories that I've seen out there, as you have too.
Let's do another podcast on that.
No, I mean, it's just.
I think we could do a whole podcast on all the crazy stuff
all
that we've had to deal with.
Nutty things that we've seen over our life.
You remember the zero turn radius lawnmower guy that was across from you guys a few years ago that was trying to put diamonds under a lawnmower?
Yeah.
And saying you could polish the concrete that way?
Absolutely. I do remember that. I got an applicator still owns one, to be honest with you.
It's amazing to me. But so, any last kind of comments or things about industry or?
No, it's just been a good ride. You and I've had a good ride.
Yes, sir.
It's been a good ride. I've seen this industry grow from its infancy to where it is now. I just wish I had a few more years on me, like you have many more years on me. It seems to really grow, but it's been good. The relationships that we've built, the people that we've met. Believe it or not, this industry is a big industry, but honestly, it's a small industry.
Realistically, there's two genesis points. It was Knoxville, Tennessee, and Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you track, you can go to not everyone, but let's say 80% of the companies out there, and they're either run, trained, or using products, personnel, or techniques that developed from those two genesis points.
Absolutely. It's hard to believe that when I was in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I was Northwest Arkansas.
And you was Northwest Arkansas, that those would be the two epicenters of the polished concrete industry.
Yep. Where was Detroit, Michigan 100 years ago?
Yeah, really. David, I enjoyed our time.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so
All right,
much.
take
Appreciate
care
it.
of yourself. Good
Have a great
seeing
day,
you
everybody.
again.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, David.
That's it for this episode. If you like this episode of Foundations, be sure to head over to our website, expertconcretetraining.com, for training videos and content tailored to your needs, interests, and job role. You can find topic and/or document links from today's discussion in the episode notes on our website. We appreciate your feedback, questions, and support. For specific job-related technical questions, please go to the Experts on Demand tab at expertconcretetraining.com. To suggest a topic for discussion on the podcast, please email info@expertconcretetraining.com. On behalf of David and myself, thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you. The hosts and guests presented within this podcast have experience working with concrete, allowing them to provide insight concerning various construction conditions that might differ for the listener. The content and materials, as well as the products referenced within this podcast, are presented for general information only and are not presented as professional advice. Reference to specific products or service providers does not constitute an endorsement nor illustrate that a particular result can be achieved. Listeners should take care to follow all product manufacturers' warnings and instructions and understand all applicable safety codes. The opinions, views, and statements made within this podcast are those of the hosts and guests only. If you have any questions, concerns, or issues on your project and need additional support, please reach out to your manufacturer or consult with a firm like ours for specific and direct assistance with your particular needs and concrete.